Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. Hope everyone is doing well out there this morning and having a great start to your day and a great start to your week. Here to give you some updated information on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Monday. We'll talk about a couple things in today's version of the video. Of course, we'll speak on what's going on out west, especially in Southern California, where we continue to get this basically this atmospheric river type setup and a fire hose of moisture into the Southern California coastline. We'll give you some updated information on that, and then we'll speak on this upper level low that continues to just sort of spin in the southeast, bring some moisture for certain areas, and will continue to bring a severe weather risk for areas of South Florida. We even have some strong storms, strong to severe storms moving into the Florida Keys right now as I speak. So we'll break it all down for you folks, and then after we move past today's version of the video, we will give you some updated information on this pattern change, and we'll speak on two, maybe potentially for three storm signals I'm watching, but really that third storm signal is way on out there, so I'm not going to speak heavily on that. And speaking of speaking, I cannot speak at all this morning for whatever reason. It's like my brain is telling me to speak these words, but what's coming out is totally different. So I don't know what's going on this morning. And then we'll speak on how cold it could potentially get and how confidence just continues to do nothing but increase that a significant pattern change is coming. And we're no longer like 300 and something hours out anymore. I mean, we're much closer than that now. The building blocks of this is already inside 200 hours. So we're going to speak on that and continue to pump out updated information on this. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. I am basically an entire weekend behind on comments. I'll get caught up a little bit later this afternoon for you folks. So let's get rocking and rolling. So speaking of the upper level low, you can see this very broad spin across the southeast. And if you look really closely, you see these reds and oranges and yellows. Those are some nasty storms about to move into the Florida Keys. In fact, they had an alert out on these storms. I don't know if they still do. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, for a water spout. So if you live in the Florida Keys, by the time some of you folks watch this, this will be on through. But could be a serious situation moving into the Florida Keys right now. But of course, we had that nasty day of weather in South Georgia, North Florida yesterday, where that severe weather threat materialized much, much higher than what people thought. I was not expecting it. A lot of people weren't. Definitely a tough one to figure out, as it caught everybody off guard. So I hope you guys are doing much better this morning. I did see some damage, unfortunately, but hope you guys are faring well and staying safe out there this morning. A lot of moisture out west, but the big circled area is Southern California, where this fire hose of moisture just continues to move into LA, even starting to move into San Diego now, and then a little bit north of LA. You know, you guys continue to get blasted. You got flash flood warnings ongoing right now. Dangerous situation continues. And then we still got this system up here in the Atlantic Canada. And I think this will actually pinwheel some moisture in the form of maybe some snow all the way down into maybe extreme eastern Mass, and some snow showers are possible into Maine also. So speaking of severe weather, you do have the marginal risk down here at the far southern tip of Florida. You have a level 1 out of 5 risk, and this is basically for a 2% risk of a tornado. Let me make sure, so 2% risk of a tornado, right? Basically only for Miami and a little bit north and a little bit south. I mean, the Bahamas are going to get some nasty weather also as we get into later this morning into this afternoon. So if you just happen to be tuning in and you're from the Bahamas, expect some nasty storms to work their way throughout the afternoon for sure. So, but the rest of the country is pretty quiet as far as severe weather. Now, I mean, I did see a storm that had some rotation off the California coastline about to move inland, but I haven't heard much about that since. But there is a general risk of thunderstorms in California, so you can't rule out some thunderstorms with all this moisture moving in. High risk of flash flooding. This does include LA and just north. That means there's at least a 70% chance of flash flood guidance being met within 25 miles in any given location. If you're wondering what the red is, that means there's at least a 40% chance of that same criteria. So the flooding threat, this is sort of the last day of high-end flooding potential. But man, today could be the worst day out of any of the days that we've seen over the last few days. So please be aware of this, and I'm sure you already are. There's a ton of advisories, watches, and warnings out west. especially in California. High wind warnings in the mustard colors. Flood watches continue. Flash flood warnings out for certain areas. Winter storm warnings for the higher elevations. Even winter storm warnings up now for the higher elevations of Arizona. Winter storm watches up for higher elevations of Utah and Colorado. And we are still dealing with just a never-ending fog up here in the upper portion of the Midwest and the plains. So some wind advisories up for areas of Louisiana and a couple counties, and extreme southeast areas of Texas. So talking about the southeast today, though, this is what we could expect. Some showers will continue just to plague southern sections of California. It's not California. I'm speaking a lot of California. Southern sections of South Carolina. Some showers will start to move into eastern sections of Georgia if they're not already ongoing right now. And then we'll continue just to get this feed of strong to severe storms, affecting areas of the Florida Keys and extreme southern sections of Florida. I really don't think we're going to get any storms in northern Florida today, but don't hold me to it. Well, hold me to it. That's fine. I'm pretty confident we're not going to see anything like what we saw yesterday in northern Florida, southern Georgia. But we continue to move this forward, and there's that rain that continues just to inch along the South Carolina coastline, and some showers will continue to kind of ooze into central Georgia. But look at all these storms out in the Bahamas. So we'll go on and, and I did want to mention, as we get into this afternoon, this evening, really overnight into tomorrow morning, honestly, this low will try to get pretty strong, but, I definitely think most of the moisture will stay offshore by the time we are getting into tomorrow morning. Closer look at South Florida, and you see those areas of like reds, even purples. Those are some pretty strong storms, folks. So, this is around 10 a.m., 11 a.m., lunchtime. Look at these storms rumbling through the Bahamas. We continue just to get rounds of thunderstorms in South Florida, the Florida Keys. And so this is going to be sort of an all morning, all afternoon sort of deal. I think by the time maybe we get into this evening, into the overnight hours, things will calm down a little bit, but you could still get some sporadic storms, showers, things like that. Now, moving up to the northeast, it's a pretty quiet weather day today. Enjoy the day. Some snow showers and light snow might work their way into the down east areas of Maine, and by the time we get into this evening, could get some snow showers, some light snow action. This evening out on Cape Cod, extreme southeastern sections of Mass. It's very possible, so don't let that catch you by surprise. Maybe some heavier bursts of snow out on Nantucket. It's very, very possible. I wouldn't be surprised you get a dusting of snow overnight in these areas. Wouldn't be surprised one bit at all. Just it's cold enough for some snow. So, you guys haven't seen much out in this region this winter so far. So might get a light snow event for you folks, but it might not happen at all. We'll have to watch. But outside of that, folks, there's nothing going on over the next 24 hours besides a little bit of light snow and, extreme southeast Mass. Talking about south central U.S., it's also very quiet. There's nothing going on. Much more stable, calm day compared to maybe a few days ago when we had those tornadoes, or that tornado in North Texas. So much quieter out there in the south central U.S. Not a whole lot to speak on at all this afternoon, this evening, into the overnight hours. Not really anything going on. A little bit of snow starts to show up in the higher elevations of southern Colorado, not California, Colorado. So north central U.S., another quiet day. It's been very quiet up in this portion of the world, of the country. So, you guys continue just to deal with very just chill conditions. Winter has been non-existent for like several weeks now, and honestly will probably continue to be non-existent at least for the foreseeable future. So, I know I got some winter weather fans up along I know for sure the Great Lakes region, but man, it just continues to be very, very quiet. I don't think there's any snow on the ground in Minneapolis. In fact, I know there isn't. I'm like 99% confident that there is nothing really snow cover wise going on up here at all. So, some of the areas you got some lingering snow on the ground, but man, it just continues just to be very quiet up here. Totally different than last winter. If you remember last winter around this time of the year up here in the Great Lakes region, I was talking about you guys a lot, as basically a ridge built over the southeast, and all the action was kind of pushing into your region, but very quiet so far this time of the year. So the western U.S., a very broad look at what's going on. I want to show kind of everybody because there is going to be some rounds of moisture that move across the central Rockies. You see Idaho and areas of Utah, western Wyoming. And we would continue to just get some moisture up here in the Cascades in the Pacific Northwest, lower elevation rain, higher elevation snow. And, we do have winter storm warnings up for the higher elevations of Nevada. So you guys are going to pick up several inches of snow. But this is really the big storyline right in here. We're going to zoom into this area here in a second. Fire hose of moisture, San Diego, things really go downhill, I think, later this afternoon, this evening, into the overnight hours. But it just won't last quite as long for you folks, I don't think. But you guys will definitely pick up a lot of rain. And we're getting into tomorrow morning. Look at all that snow in Nevada. Not a whole lot going on in the Northern Rockies, but you see how all this action begins to push into Arizona, higher elevation snow. Phoenix will get a lot of rain tomorrow, for example. And this will continue to push all the way into the middle of the night, Tuesday night, starting to get into Wednesday morning. And we're starting to get a lot of moisture starting to move into like the southern areas of the Rockies. And then California begins to quiet back down. But you're going to continue to get kind of just rounds of kind of burst of rain in California, even as we get into the middle portion of the week. So snowfall and what this looks like, closer look. Well, I wouldn't say this is a close look, but kind of a broad look at the Rockies and, just kind of showing you the idea between now and the next 24 hours. Higher elevation snow, lower elevation more so rain, Salt Lake City, the valley region of Idaho. And just those lower elevations are just going to see rain. Higher elevation, though, snow, just, this is kind of an area of the country where you guys stay tuned to your local people. They know those areas much better than I do. I'm not afraid to admit that, but there's a lot of microclimates out here for sure. But you see this fire hose of moisture that's basically going right into Southern California. Now, even up the Central California coastline and Northern California. Now, you guys continue to get a lot of moisture in the form of lower elevation rain, higher elevation snow. But this is the area right here. You continue, you get to about midday, you're getting into this afternoon, you're getting into this evening, you continue just to get this push of moisture, and it really picks up overnight into like San Diego. But you can see the Sierra Nevada getting all that snow, and the state of Nevada, depending on your elevation, getting a lot of snow. And I think as we get into like tomorrow morning, things will begin to calm down a little bit, but you're still going to get rounds of rain. And they could be very heavy too. Like, for example, this is around 2-3 o'clock tomorrow. This could change a little bit, but, showing almost thunderstorms kind of working their way into the Southern California coastline. And then just Southern Cal in general. And so it's not completely over. And you're talking about rainfall for my folks down here in Southern California. San Diego going for a couple inches of rain. And then, Los Angeles could get another 3 to 4 inches of rain on top of what you're already seeing, what you've already saw, and what you're seeing right now, and then what you will see over the next 48 hours. And so that's a lot more rain. So you guys you already have ongoing flooding situations right now. Things are just going to continue over the next 24 hours at least. And then snowfall, several inches, the feet of snow will continue. You guys have already picked up a ton. I'll be interested in hearing about some of these snow totals that some folks got. But, even in these higher elevations kind of in Southern California, folks, that's feet of snow in some of these higher elevations. They've actually increased the forecast snow amounts for some of these ranges right into here outside of the big cities of LA and San Diego and up the road a little bit. So, stay tuned to your local people. Always, want to speak on you guys, especially when you have such a significant event ongoing. In the past, I didn't, but, I think it's important for me personally, I like to do it just because it helps me learn the geographical features out there better. And second, I'm trying to grow the channel and trying to pick up subscribers from out there. And, even though my take on the weather out west is very broad, it's not very detailed as it is in the central and especially eastern U.S. I think the more I talk about, the more comfortable I will get with talking about it. So, but temperatures today, you see this kind of area of cooler air. This is where, cloud cover and drizzle and rain will be most likely. So temperatures might be held into the 40s in areas of like Georgia, maybe Alabama. But you get out of the influence of that cloud cover and the rain, it could warm into the 60s. For example, the low country of South Carolina could be cooler today than the upstate. It's just the way the setup is. But man, it is very warm all the way up into the upper Midwest portion of the country. 50s getting all the way up into Wisconsin. A chilly day in the Northeast, but nothing too crazy for early February standards. A little bit more chillier down here in Texas. We move out west, and it's warming up ahead of this system. And like southern sections of Arizona, be a nice day ahead of the active day tomorrow in like Phoenix. But nothing too unusual out here. Still well above average up here into the northern plains. So that's probably the only unusual portion of this. Well, I mean, it hasn't been really unusual over the last several days, as the temperatures have been well above average up into this area of the country for quite some time now. So, all right, guys, so we're going to switch gears and talk about 2 storm signals I'm watching. And we'll start to really zoom in on this one because it's right here out in here. It's right out in front of us. Man, I cannot speak this morning to save my life. Some videos are going to be like that. You guys know that. But the first storm signal is right out in front of us, like middle portion to the later portion of this week that we're in right now. And it's basically the same energy associated with what's moving into California right now. So we're going to get it. This is starting off midday Wednesday. We're going to get a lot of snow in the Rockies. And then this will what we call eject across the plains. And in this case, it's ejecting pretty far north. Low right here. This will bring an opportunity for some snow even in eastern Montana, North Dakota, an area of the country that's not seen a lot of snow so far, at least over the last several weeks. You'll get a little opportunity for some accumulating snow. But this system, you see this 993 low, it's cutting. It's cutting across not just the middle portion of the country, but the upper portion of the lower 48. So this will actually just bring rain potential for Minneapolis and the Great Lakes region. Could bring some backside snow, and this will move into Canada. Not be a big deal. Then our eyes will focus on what's going to happen in the south central U.S. This could potentially bring all kinds of weather. But, we get into this coming weekend, like Saturday, you see the moisture building into Texas and the deep south and Mississippi Valley. And here comes the system right here. Now, cold air is crashing down a little bit more. Remember, we talked about this pattern change, a little bit more cold air coming down. So there's 2 things happening. 1, a little bit more winter weather a little bit further south. And 2, this cold air push is suppressing this storm track. So it's still cutting, but it's cutting a little bit further south. So GFS, and this isn't a forecast, we don't know if this is exactly what it's going to do, has a low pressure over Tennessee, cutting across that region. Then it's cutting across the Appalachian Mountains. Kind of develops another low back here, wants to deliver snow for northern Missouri. And then this thing kind of gets suppressed south. So it looks like it's going to kind of do this and just kind of keep on rolling, and then it kind of does more so like that. And that's because you got high pressure suppressing this storm track and making it move more so kind of west to east instead of southwest to northeast. But you keep this going, it never does anything really big for the northeast. But that's kind of a signal between that first storm signal, which isn't really a signal anymore, it's definitely going to happen, and our second storm signal. So it's kind of weird. The GFS splits everything up, and then we get a bigger storm that kind of comes up, around the evening of the 12th, getting into the 13th. And this is just a big rainstorm for the southeast, but man, a little bit more cold air is coming down. And then high pressure suppresses this, and we start to get into the evening of the 13th. And we got a 994 low, not a forecast, and it's dumping a pretty quick hitting, significant winter storm for areas of the southern northeast region and the mid-Atlantic region, not a forecast. But there you go. I mean, you're already starting to get what we call these fantasy runs, and I don't really think this is a fantasy run. I don't think this is exactly the way it'll happen, but I do think that it's indicating the pattern coming up. We're starting to get some wild runs, and yeah, so you continue to keep this going, and this moves on off, and then even more cold air sort of suppresses down. We're at day 10 at this point. We're getting past Valentine's Day, not Valentine's Day. I know since I was a kid, I've always called it Valentine's Day, and some things just stick. And I had a couple people mention in the comments, it's just the way I've always said it. I've always said cinnamon instead of cinnamon. Now, I've corrected that since, but I always say it to my wife just to mess with her on purpose. But for the longest time, I said cinnamon. So anyways, let's keep rolling. The GFS from overnight has this substantial cold air push. I mean, it is big. I mean, and guys, 270 hours out. No longer talking about 380 hours out, folks. We're getting just past Valentine's Day. We're starting to get into the 15th into the 16th. Big cold air push, we'll watch energy associated with it. And remember when I was talking to you how we're going to start to see fantasy runs? Of course, the overnight GFS run threw us a bone, shows a winter storm for the south all the way into the Carolinas. And yeah, when you see this, so many people, when I show you this, I'm not pointing at anybody because I don't know necessarily the names of who does it or whatever it may be. When they see this, they think, oh, Mitch is saying there's going to be a winter storm on the February 19th and 20th. And then we'll get past this frame and it doesn't happen. And it'll be like, whatever happened to that winter storm you said was going to happen on the 19th and 20th? Folks, I'm just showing you what the pattern is setting up to be like. What we're kind of showing you the potential. I use that word a ton to the point of it's probably annoying to some folks. But, it points to that time frame that I've been mentioning and many other people have been mentioning. We're getting close to the 19th to the 20th and cold air is pushing down. And we've been talking about this for 2-3 weeks, folks? And we're inching it closer. And now we're starting to see the fruit of what the models have been showing. It's not a forecast. It does not mean we're going to get a winter storm, the Monday of the 19th of February. It's just showing you, hey, there's some noise here. And if you look at the latest 06Z run, it shows something similar again, but it's 384 hours out. Way too far out. It's a little bit more delayed with it, but shows something kind of similar. So I think we're going to continue to see some crazy fantasy runs, in my opinion. You look at the European, same thing. There goes that first storm system that's definitely going to happen. It's in forecast period now. And then what happens after that? A little bit of rain push, throughout the southeast. Cold air, see that 540 line kind of starting to ooze south. And then, that's a rainstorm, getting at the end of this weekend for the northeast based off what the Euro is showing. And you continue to keep this going. And here comes a lot of rain moving across the south as we get about a week from today. Could be a rainy start to our Monday morning next Monday. And cold air starting to push a little bit further down. You're thinking, man, this is probably about to be a big winter storm for the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic. But no, it gets suppressed. And all that moisture, remember those crazy Euro runs we were showing yesterday for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic? Things are still trying to iron out. So, it's cold enough at this point for areas of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast for winter weather, but this low is suppressed. But that's not a forecast. So it's almost looking like we might get 2 storm systems. I'm not even going to call what's going to cut across the northern portion of the country storm signal number 1 anymore. We know it's going to happen. So you know how I am with dubbing like storm signals 1 and 2 and 3. But there's some crazy things happen once we get past day 7 and day 8. We start to get into early next week. We're starting to get a bigger cold air push now. See that 540 line diving all the way down to the southeast. All kinds of things start to show up. And then we get about 240 hours out. We're getting a nice cold air push. And then we start to watch for that southern jet that gets active. There's signals showing up. This is the European ensemble. This indicates a lower pressure. And there's that sort of signal about a week from today. I would say about 6 days from now. You see this area of sort of bluer colors right in here, almost dark blue. This indicates lower pressure. There goes the one that's going to cut across the upper portion of the country right here, kind of leaving the picture. And then, we get into kind of early next week. It's symbolizing a pretty broad area of blue right in here, which means you could have a low right here, a low right here, a low right here. And I don't think the cold air is quite there yet. I think it could be for the Northeast, maybe the Mid-Atlantic, but definitely not for the Southeast. Definitely not. But this kind of continues, could turn to a substantial storm, potentially. Now, speaking of that first storm signal, that I just said I wouldn't call it the first storm signal, but calling it right now for that, for a reason, this is going to bring some accumulating snow potential, through later this week into the weekend. As you can tell, the blend of all models, dumping accumulating snow across North Dakota, maybe areas of South Dakota and Montana. So there is a snow signal there, and, we're going into also, into Minnesota. It's trying to throw you a bone in areas of northern Minnesota, but not a lot. The real pattern shift kind of comes, and this kind of loops with what we just talked about with the storm signal, is one thing I did not mention in this video, and I mentioned a ton in last night's video. Definitely check out last night's video if you haven't, because there hasn't been a substantial change from last night's video and this morning's video. Besides, we're seeing some fantasy runs on the GFS model. That's the only difference. We're going to get that warm up right at the end of this week into this weekend. So don't let that fool you. That's been forecasted. It's been forecasted for a while now. Big warm up coming, and you can see it with the ridge. But as you can tell, as you are getting into next Monday, the 12th, you see the bluer colors showing up. This doesn't necessarily indicate well below average temperatures. That's not what this indicates. This is This is conditions at 500 millibars, which is like 18,000 feet up in the air. It kind of shows you the atmospheric pattern on what's going on. So lower pressure indicated by these bluer areas right in here. And what this tells us is that you're probably going to have some sort of storminess over the eastern U.S. and it's cooling down. All right, so we kind of keep this going and we get all the way to about, let's just take it all the way to about the 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. All right, a couple things going on. You continue to get this consistent, and note, remember, we were talking about 330, 340 hours out a few days ago. We're now at 252. This is doing nothing but increasing in confidence. So for all the Debbie Downers that say, Mitch, I don't believe there's a pattern change coming, there's no way, you got to put the negative emotions aside. Because I think a lot of people, and this goes with anything in life, but with weather especially, just because I'm more in tune with it, they sort of match up. They kind of compare current situations with past situations when it comes to the weather, and they just think it's always going to do exactly what it did the last several times it happened. And I get that. That goes with anything in life. You kind of get your guard up. You don't trust it's going to happen, and I get it. But and if this doesn't happen, I mean, you can throw the fruit at me, make me eat crow, throw the whatever you want at me. But I mean, we're pretty confident this is happening. It's just because we have a good pattern, that doesn't mean that Georgia or South Carolina is going to get 6 inches of snow. That's not what it means. It just says, hey, things are lining up for something better. But we stop it here after I'm done rambling. Ridge is building up into here. Notice this lower pressure right into here. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then we got this a lower pressure right into here. So ridge is built up into this region. Jet stream is dipping down this trough down into here. And then what I want you to notice is this right into here. You see these warmer colors up here in Greenland. Remember, the warmer colors indicates ridging, more stable conditions, warmer than average conditions. The bluer, lower pressure, storminess, coolness, and just a trough of low pressure, which typically indicates there's some sort of activity ongoing. So between this ridge that's built over this region right into here and this ridge right into here, we call this a negative NAO. We call this ridge into Alaska a negative EPO. And then the ridge over the western areas of Canada and the U.S., a positive PNA. This helps to dislodge cold air south, somewhere into this region. All right, and we dislodge cold air from the north into an active pattern. We could get some sort of winter weather. Now, I don't like this time frame for anybody in the southeast. This could do something for maybe the northeast. But if you kind of keep this rolling and watch how the pattern evolves, right? Kind of the same look, spiking ridge up to Alaska. You like to see that if you're a winter weather fan, the lower 48. Big time negative NAO. I mean, big time negative anomalies right in here. This helps to basically dislodge cold air and sort of help that storm track. But what I want you to notice here is this blue's kind of creeping into the area right in here. Right? And we continue to get this trough setting up over the eastern U.S. And you see how they connect right here. Remember, I keep telling you guys, I like the time period of the 20th onward. Could be a day earlier. But you notice how the blues connect right here. So, and we go a little bit further. Let's go all the way to the end of the run. It's European ensemble. This, to me, this is an active southern jet. Basically, the Pacific jet extension is kind of rumbling through the southern sections, the southern tier of the country. At the same time, you still got a ridge built up into this region. You need to keep that. All right, and then you got this trough digging down to here, and you still have this negative NAO. I'm going to try to write that. I don't know why I just tried. That's ugly. So cold air is still coming down here. You're starting to get that active southern track. The southern stream's getting excited. That means that we're probably going to start to see a lot of storm systems probably in the south. And if we do that and we continue to keep that cold air funnel, I think that's why we're starting to see that cold air feed, not funnel. So I got maybe the same thing. I don't know. I think that's why we're starting to see on the GFS, for example. And remember, the Euro only goes out 10 days, which I think it'll be after the 10-day period when we see any potential for, areas further south. But the GFS kind of goes out 15 days, which is an unreliable period, but it's starting to see what we're seeing on the ensembles, which is activity in this lower pressure region, kind of meeting up with this colder air. And I mean, you kind of go back to the GFS run and it shows a storm system cruising across here, hitting that cold air. And honestly, to me, This screams a cold air damming type setup with some sort of 50 low right in here. We've been talking about that when we thought we had a chance around this time period. Actually, when we were talking about a week ago. But cold air feed down to here, yeah. So, you just got to watch. You just got to watch these areas. So, very interesting pattern setting up for sure. And you talk about temperatures. I mean, it's going to cool down, folks. I mean, there's the below average temperatures showing up inside day 10 now. Below average temperatures really take hold around Valentine's Day, across the southeast mid-Atlantic, and then they just stay put, folks. I mean, they just continue. It gets colder and it gets colder and it gets colder. And to the point where like almost the entire country is below average temperature wise. So if you don't believe this is coming, that's fine. You don't have to. If you want to wait till you look out your window, walk outside with shorts on and it's freezing, that's cool. But I mean, I think it's coming. You look at the signal off the European ensemble, not a whole lot going on. There's that kind of first signal, throwing some snow up here for the northern portion of the country. And then there's the signal that increases for the Northeast, the Great Lakes region. And then as we start to get right at the end, you start to see some kind of oozing down south of the snow mean. Not very high, though. But we're just starting to get into that favorable period that I like for a little further south. Now, we look at the GFS ensemble. We're going to have to update this, and this is the one from 06Z. Same thing. You see how the snow fills in from this area? Now watch how it starts to fill in for these areas right into here as we continue to move forward. And we need to get that snowpack back, guys. We really do. This helps kind of almost insulate the cold air when it dives down. But you continue to keep going, and then look at that signal for the mid-Atlantic. You continue to keep going, you continue to get going, you continue, and then this only goes out, 354 hours out. But you can see things are starting to creep a little bit further south. So we'll continue to watch this, folks. I think that we're going to get a lot of crazy fantasy runs this week. I really do, because it's going to indicate what we're seeing. But we'll continue to watch this, guys, and continue to pump out those updates. God bless all y'all. Have a great start to your week, a fantastic Monday, and I'll talk to you soon.